The Ohio State Buckeyes suffer a season-ending injury days before their top 5 matchup against Indiana, with a trip to the Big Ten championship game on the line. Locked on Big Ten starts right now.
You are Locked on Big Ten, your daily podcast on the Big Ten Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked on Big Ten. I'm Craig Sheeman, 40 years as a sports talk show host and play-by-play announcer, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com and get started. So, how a season-ending injury will affect the Buckeyes on Saturday and next Saturday. Plus, famous pundits out there with their predictions on the IU-Ohio State game and our Big Ten classics. Maybe IU-Ohio State will be a Big Ten classic shortly. There's no bigger game in the country on Saturday than the top 5 Big Ten matchup between 5th-ranked Indiana and 2nd-ranked Ohio State and Columbus, noon Eastern on Fox on Saturday. And the winner will likely face Oregon in the Big Ten championship game on December 7th. But the Buckeyes' already thin offensive line will have to play Saturday without their starting center, Seth McLaughlin, who tore his Achilles in practice on Tuesday. And unfortunately, that's a long-term injury, so his season is over. The Buckeyes are already without left tackle Josh Simmons, who suffered a season-ending knee injury against Oregon a few weeks ago. At the time, the Buckeyes moved their left guard Donovan Jackson on over to tackle and moved Carson Heinzman to the guard spot. McLaughlin was an experienced center. He transferred from Alabama this past offseason to help shore up the Buckeyes' offensive line. He had big game experience. Of course, when you're at Alabama, you're always going to have big game experience, including the Rose Bowl loss to Michigan. McLaughlin was having a solid season for the Buckeyes this year. He was midseason All-American with the Associated Press and the Sporting News. And through this past week, McLaughlin helped the Buckeyes average 5.25 yards per carry. That's up from just over 4 yards a carry last year. So the running game was working very well. And they've done a great job protecting quarterback Will Howard as well. Only 12 sacks this season. And in fact, McLaughlin himself had given up 0 sacks this year. So what will the Buckeyes do to replace their most important offensive lineman? Well, redshirt freshman Josh Padilla had been his backup and had been playing in garbage time of blowouts. But they might move Carson Heinzman, last year's center, back to center this year. Again, he played 12 games there last year as a redshirt freshman. I think that would be their best option moving forward. But the problem is here now with injuries to McLaughlin and Simmons out for the year, and the 2 other linemen moving around and playing out of position, so to speak, the Buckeyes are going to be challenged against the big, productive defensive linemen that the Hoosiers will bring. Not to mention next week when they face the team from up north, which has the best interior defensive line in the country. More on that next week, 1 week at a time, 1 game at a time. Indiana's defensive end, Mikhail Kamara, is a sack machine. 9.5 sacks this year, 14.5 tackles for loss, 2 forced fumbles. And defensive tackles and senior C.J. West, 6'2", 317 pounds, plugging it up inside. He's got 2 sacks and 5 tackles for loss. And James Carpenter has 4 sacks this year. And the Hoosiers' best tackler, Aiden Fisher, their linebacker, got a great nose for the ball. And if he's got an inexperienced center meeting him on the second level, he could have a big day against the Buckeyes running game. And unlike Ohio State, Indiana coach Curt Cignetti has said this week that the Hoosiers are at full strength coming off their bye week. They are ready to go. This could be an interesting matchup, no doubt about it. We've been looking forward to it for a long time. You may have noticed on another note that I've said that this game will likely determine who plays Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Now, did you notice that the Big Ten, they didn't announce it until Tuesday. earlier this week, Tuesday, that Oregon did indeed lock up a spot in the Big Ten title game following Saturday night's win over Wisconsin to go to 11-0. Tuesday, 3 days after everybody played their last game. For the record, Monday here on Locked On Big Ten on our podcast, we announced that Oregon was indeed going to the Big Ten championship game. But, did the league really need 3 days to figure things out with all the tiebreaker scenarios? It's a big embarrassment. We have to admit this. But apparently the conference had to go through numerous scenarios in the season's final 2 weeks to make sure that there was no way that Oregon wouldn't finish in the top 2 spots if they lose to Washington next week. They got a bye this week. They got the season finale against Washington next week. And if they lose that game, did that trigger any tiebreaker scenarios? If we have a bunch of one-loss teams, it's possible we could have Oregon and Ohio State, or Oregon and Indiana and Penn State, all one-loss teams. Could be some situations there. That's if Oregon loses to Washington at the end of the season. Anyway, I guess they checked off all the boxes and the tiebreakers and all that. They did figure that there is no way that Oregon will not be at least 1 or 2 top teams in the Big Ten and have a spot in the Big Ten championship. So that's done. Oregon will be in the Big Ten championship. That's weird. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. Taken 3 days to make it official, but that's what happened. Anyway, they're in there. Anyway, so again, from us here at Locked On Big Ten to you Oregon fans, congratulations again. Meanwhile, go back to Wednesday's Locked On Big Ten podcast. We made an earnest effort to go through all the Big Ten tiebreakers for the remaining spot, not the Oregon one, but the one that might involve Indiana and Penn State, and how is Ohio State involved in this? Various tiebreakers. It's very complex. And we thought we did a pretty good job in detail and try to keep it simple as well for the podcast, and went through going through all the tiebreakers. And again, you missed it. It was Wednesday's podcast, a Locked On Big Ten. Back to Indiana and Ohio State for a moment. This game will be broadcast on the big noon kickoff on Fox Eastern time. We will go live on Locked On Big Ten on our YouTube channel a little bit after the game. But it's going to be 12:15 kickoff-ish, sort of. We're going to just say 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, top of the hour, assuming the game's over. There's no overtime. We're going to go live. So 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, we'll go live. Immediate post-game reaction from Indiana and Ohio State. You'll have my reaction. I'll get yours. I love the real-time comments on the YouTube channel during that segment that we do each and every Saturday. It'll be a little earlier than we normally go. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be big. It's going to be a great day of college football and a great day to be podcasting live with you guys. Speaking of TV, several pundits are checking in with their predictions for this game. Former UCLA coach and CBS analyst Rick Neuheisel, he likes to make those upset predictions. He's got a knack of coming through with a few of them. He says the Hoosiers are going to upset the Ohio State Buckeyes outright, despite the fact the Hoosiers are 12.5, 13.5 point underdogs, depending on which service you end up looking at. Paul Feinbaum, who's always cranky, and he's very anti-Big Ten, and he's very pro-SEC, he remains perplexed that Indiana and Penn State are ranked so highly in the college football playoff polls. He maintains that Indiana and Penn State haven't played a tough enough schedule to be ranked so high. And look, relax, Feiney. All right. Indiana and Ohio State, that'll take care of a lot of your argument, and that'll go by the wayside. They'll hash things out on the football field on Saturday. He's always so pro-SEC and anti-Big Ten anyway. And then there was this gem by Joey Galloway during the unveiling of the ratings on Tuesday night on ESPN. He said the Hoosiers, ranked 5th, they should sit starting quarterback Curtis Rourke against Ohio State. Don't play him. Don't play him. He says, hey, you don't want to risk him being injured against Ohio State. You want him available for the playoffs. Now, there's a school of thought out there that if Indiana does not win this game against Ohio State, there won't be any playoffs. But there might be. They're ranked 5th, and they'd only be losing to a 2-seeded team in Ohio State. If that's how it played out, they might not fall out of the best 12 teams in America. Maybe. But anyway, he says, rest Rourke, don't get him hurt, so he's available for the playoffs. He wanted to use the example of Jordan Travis for Florida State and how he got hurt at the end of their perfect season, and they fell apart and they didn't get a playoff bid. It was a disaster. That's the most ridiculous take I've ever heard out of takes of any football analyst. I had to double back. Did he really say that? It's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. There's not a coach in America that would say to his team, hey, we're going to sit out our best player for this game and save him for the playoffs and hope we get in it. No, Kurt Signetti wouldn't do that. Nick Saban wouldn't do that. Ryan Day wouldn't do that. It's ridiculous on its face value. Anyway, I have many more reasons why that's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous. How about your thoughts and comments on all this? Ohio State, are they in trouble without these offensive linemen? Your thoughts on Indiana with the upset? Your thoughts on Rick Neuheisel saying the Hoosiers are going to win? Your thoughts on Finey being all upset for nothing? All that. And Galloway's comments. Would love to hear from you on the YouTube comments. You can also hit me up on Twitter as well, or X at Talk Big Ten. By the way, while I'm mentioning all this stuff, don't forget, if you're watching on video, see on the crawl on the bottom, talkbig10.com. That's our website where all of our podcasts go. And you can also buy yourself or your friends or your family for the holidays, Big Ten merchandise, shirts, hats, t-shirts, coffee mugs, all that stuff. It's linked in there if you want to go. I will always ask you before you go to subscribe. It's free. Hit the subscribe button. It's always free. And then we're all together here. And you can follow Locked On Big Ten for free wherever you get your podcasts. And that way you'll get the latest episode of this podcast as soon as it becomes available each and every day. So we always appreciate that. And we always get a bunch. We're always grateful for that as well. All right, coming up, there's another game in the Big Ten schedule this weekend that I find very intriguing. I think the second most interesting game in the Big Ten this weekend is Wisconsin and Nebraska. I will tell you why. Plus, we have our Players of the Week and our Big Ten Classics. It's all coming up right here on Locked On Big Ten. Skylight frames. Let me tell you about this. This is a great idea for holiday gifts. All right. If you're missing your family because they're on the other side of the country, or you got a big family and it's hard to find gifts for everybody, this is perfect. We've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight frame. It's a touchscreen digital photo frame that the whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear within seconds. It takes less than 60 seconds to set up. You can invite friends and family to share photos via the free Skylight mobile app or email. That's easy. No account or subscription required for that. And it only takes a tap on your phone to send a few photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop with what's going on. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's Skylight, SkylightFrame.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. Again, skylightframe.com/college. You watch games, they're exciting, right? Make them more exciting with FanDuel. Tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets live on the NFL all in one place. And if you get a hunch or want to look up some stats or keep up with the scores, it's all there on the same place that you put your bets in. Just visit FanDuel.com today to join, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Sunday Night Football, Eagles and Rams. Philly -3. I actually like the Rams +3 on this one. Check it all out at FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, thank you, everybody, for making Locked On Big Ten your first listen each and every day, especially you everydayers out there. Meanwhile, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, share, follow, and like Locked On Big Ten, your team every day. And don't forget to peruse our website with all of our podcasts and merchandise if you'd like, talkbig10.com. So the Indiana versus Ohio State game is garnering a lot of attention around the country and here on this podcast, and justifiably so. But there's another important Big Ten matchup this weekend for different reasons, and that would be Wisconsin and Nebraska. By the way, Nebraska minus 2.5, 3:30 Eastern on the Big Ten Network. So Wisconsin and Nebraska have a lot in common. They both have had a lot of excitement coming into the season, a lot of good expectations. They have both struggled. They're both 5-5. Both coaches, Luke Fickell and Matt Rule, are in year 2 of trying to build their programs. Both need one win to become bowl eligible, and both could do that on Saturday. One of them will. Both made changes at offensive coordinator recently, and both have rabid fan bases who want more than they're getting. Both teams are red and white. Where they're different, one school has no clue what to do at quarterback, while the other's got it figured out. Nebraska with freshman Dylan Raiola, Wisconsin not so much. In fact, that's been the biggest problem for Luke Fickell since he arrived. His first move was to get transfer quarterback Tanner Mordecai, who's not the right fit for that air raid offense or whatever it is that he and offensive coordinator Phil Longo wanted to run. Freshman Braden Locke showed some promise last year as a freshman, and they still decided it wasn't good enough. And they decided to bring in Miami transfer Tyler Van Dyke, but he got hurt early on, even though we had our reservations about him anyway. Got hurt against Alabama, season ender, and that was it. Braden Locke back into the lineup, but he was wildly inaccurate in the Oregon game on Saturday, and the game that the Badgers led in the fourth quarter. And they lost because Locke missed open receivers and running backs. The right plays were called. Everything was there. And the plays were there to be had. That's why I have a big problem with him firing offensive coordinator Phil Longo this week. He lost his job. That wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, a week ago, Matt Rule, amid a losing streak also, and again, agonizingly one win away from bowl eligibility for the second year in a row, made a change at offensive coordinator as well, brought in Dana Holgerson, the former head coach of West Virginia and Houston, and then he's there to groom Dylan Raiola for the final stretch of the season here. Even Raiola's inserting himself into this game with the hype. He said after the tough loss to USC, he said, look, the Huskers will build on that, and we will win our next game against Wisconsin and get to a bowl. All right, so I'm sure Wisconsin's hanging that in the Badgers locker room, bulletin board material. But look, it's frustrated too, right? He wants to get that win and lead Nebraska to a bowl game. Something's got to give. So Saturday night, either Wisconsin or Nebraska will be bowl eligible after a bit of a drought for the Huskers too, from 2016. Both will still have one game to go. If the loser doesn't they still have one more chance. But I think that makes this the second most interesting game of the weekend on the Big Ten schedule. What do you think? Let me know. Want to give some shout outs to the players of the week around the Big Ten. And it's Tyler Warren, Penn State, their tight end, Mr. Everything, offensive player of the week in the Big Ten, had 8 catches, 127 yards and a touchdown, 3 rushes for 63 yards and a score in Penn State's win over Purdue. He does everything. He can throw, he can catch, he can run. I don't know. Again, every day I've said this week, why is this guy not in the Heisman talk? He scored a career-long 48-yard run in the third quarter. His 6 career rushing touchdowns, 4th of the season. Since 1956, Warren is the only Big Ten tight end to have 4 rushing touchdowns in a season. Pretty impressive. There are co-defensive players of the week. Matayo Uiagalelei out of Oregon, outside linebacker, edge rusher. Got Oregon to 11-0 for the second time in program history. That 16-13 win over Wisconsin. Had 5 tackles, a sack, and a game-sealing interception late in the fourth quarter. And he has now recorded a sack in 7 of his last 8 games. And he ranks second in the Big Ten and 12th nationally with the team and career high 8.5 sacks. So awesome job by him. Also, Russell Davis II from Washington, defensive lineman, led Washington to that 31-19 win over UCLA. And the Huskers finished their home season 6-0, extended their home winning streak to 20 games, longest in modern school history. And he had 3 quarterback sacks and 3 tackles as well, and forced a fumble and a fumble recovery all in the same play, which led to their second touchdown. So good job by him. Also, we have our special teams player of the week, Atticus Sappington out of Oregon, kicker. He helped the Ducks with that win over Wisconsin and scored all 6 of Oregon's points in the first quarter. Touchdowns were a premium in that game. Kicking was big, and he kept their undefeated season alive. Matched a career high with 3 field goals, converting all 3 attempts. 9 of Oregon's 16 points in that game. Kicks were 35, 42, and the game-winning 24-yarder with 2.5 minutes to go. And let's not forget the freshman of the week, Damon Williams. Damon Williams Jr. from Washington. I've been talking him up big the last week or so on this podcast. And, he's one of 2 quarterbacks that plays there with Rogers at Wisconsin as well, or at Washington. He comes in, change of pace. I suggested last week they need to play him more, and he did. He came in the second half, and he led to 3 second-half game-securing scores to help Washington beat UCLA in that game and become bowl eligible. Helped the Huskies to a field goal and 2 touchdowns, including a 2-yard touchdown pass to Decker DeGraff with 5:44 left in the game, and it sealed a victory over the Bruins, and he completed 7 of 8 passes for 67 yards and a touchdown. Also rushed for 31 yards on 6 carries. So congratulations to all of those guys, the Big Ten Players of the Week. We always like to take a moment to give all of them a shout out. They are due that for sure. All right, it's time to take a look ahead to the weekend broadcasting wise. Big Ten Network, I always like to pick out their Big Ten classics and their Big Ten live action so we can plan our weekends accordingly. All that's coming up in 1 minute right here on Locked On Big Ten. Prize Picks is fun. It's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everybody. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 players and their stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. It's super easy. They've invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out of your lineup, even if it isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if your picks don't all hit. It's very easy, very simple. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. That part's guaranteed. So think of like Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week, and Lamar Jackson will pass for more than 1.5 touchdowns. Group them together, put them in. Hopefully you're a winner, right? It's that easy. So download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Check it out today with Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, I'm going to take a look at the Big Ten Classics, Big Ten live action coming up this weekend. And it's hard to believe it's the next to last weekend of the regular season. I'm going to go full screen here for those of you on audio. I'll describe it, what I'm doing here on video, and we'll put this schedule up here so that you can check it out. All right, we're going to start it off. These are all Eastern times. Friday, November 22nd, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. They got a USC football classic, UCLA or USC at UCLA from 2022. You can catch that one at 2:30. They got a show, The Big Moment, called The Catch, and it looks back at what is known as The Catch. When I think of The Catch, I think of the 49ers and Dwight Clark, but there's a college version. The Trojans quarterback Rodney Peete finding wide receiver Eric Afholter as they relive the controversial play that sent USC to the 1988 Rose Bowl with a win over the crosstown rival UCLA. We do at 6 p.m. have some Big Ten men's basketball. Campbell at Ohio State. Get a look at the Buckeyes. Also at 8 o'clock, we have some more on Friday. Utah State at Iowa. And then at 10 o'clock, Big Ten men's basketball. Cal State Fullerton at UCLA. So a lot of hoops mixed in there as well. As we turn the calendar to Saturday, November 23rd, at 8 a.m. Eastern, they have a Big Ten football on 60. That's where they edit up an entire football game into 60 minutes from snap to snap to snap. Don't forget, it's from Friday's game where Purdue is at Michigan State. So that's Friday night's game. If you miss it, you want to catch it Saturday morning with the highlights, one play after the other, right there, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Then that leads into the 10 a.m. Big Ten tailgate show on the Big Ten Network. They're going to do it from Ohio State. and their for their noon kickoff, and their pregame show is there. They've got ESPN Game Day is there. Everybody's going to be there for the Indiana Ohio State game, but including the Big Ten Network with their Big Ten tailgate show. That will lead into their 11:30 Big Ten countdown to kickoff. Takes you on the field leading up to the game with previews of the day's biggest games and latest news and reports from all around the country. And that will lead into their 12 noon Big Ten football game, Iowa at Maryland. At 3:30 Eastern, they will have Wisconsin at Nebraska, the game I talked about a moment ago. The one I think is the second most interesting of the weekend, other than Indiana at Ohio State. I didn't change the page on that. There you go. Take a look at that. So there again, 12 o'clock, Iowa at Maryland, and 3:30 Wisconsin and Nebraska. On to Sunday, November 24th, noon Eastern. Speaking of those Big Ten football and 60 highlights, snap to snap edits, they'll have the replay within an hour, the Indiana at Ohio State game. And then at 2 o'clock, another Big Ten football 60, chopped up Penn State and Minnesota game. I'm interested in that too. Penn State needs to be careful of that Minnesota secondary. They intercept everything. 3 o'clock, another Big Ten football 60, Iowa at Maryland. And then we do it again, another replay of the Indiana at Ohio State edited game at 9:30. And at 11:30 Eastern, another look at the Wisconsin-Nebraska game, all edited down to 1 hour. All right, so that's it. That's a look at the weekend Big Ten Classics and Big Ten live action for this upcoming weekend. It's going to be huge. Check it out. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of me or check anything out we do, don't forget you can interact with us on Twitter or X at Talk Big Ten. Don't forget, comments on YouTube are always welcome. I asked you for your opinion on a lot of things we did today. Go ahead and hit me up. And also our website, talkbig10.com, where all of our podcasts go chronologically or we group them by school. And there are links for you if you want to do some early Christmas shopping with some Big Ten gear and with all the logos of your favorite schools on your shirts and hats and t-shirts and all that stuff, talkbig10.com. Before you go, if you don't mind, subscribe. It's free. Just click that little button and follow this podcast right now on your favorite podcast app. Share, follow, like, all that. And you get the latest episode of Lockdown Big Ten as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Tomorrow, we'll preview every Big Ten game this weekend. I know we touched on a few today, and we will have our pigskin picks. We'll go on the record with all of that. It is coming up. Thanks for your time today. Tell your friends about us, and I can't wait till we meet again tomorrow. I'm Craig Sheeman for Lockdown Big Ten.